All right, so here we go. We're going to talk about the DBQ, the document-based question. And the most important thing to remember is that this is an essay about history, not documents. And actually, it's not all that different from the long essay question or the LEQ. In fact, the rubric is almost identical. So here we go. We're going to go through it very quickly. Your learning targets: understand the expectations of the DBQ rubric and examine good and bad writing examples and be ready to write a complete DBQ and practice and reflect and improve on your own writing. Okay, so here is your DBQ rubric. And if you look very closely, you will see many of the points on here are the same as the LEQ rubric. You have to have a contextualization paragraph and thesis statement. You also have to have outside historical evidence, OHE, and you must demonstrate complex understanding. In this area, this is identical to the LEQ rubric. Here's where it gets a little different though for the DBQ. Since it has the name documents in its title, you will assume correctly that you have to analyze some documents and incorporate them in your writing. So those points will appear here in the middle of the rubric, and there's certain ways you have to analyze those documents using your CAP analysis. So the DBQ rubric actually has one more point than the LEQ rubric. The LEQ is a 6-point rubric. This is a 7-point rubric. All right, some common mistakes that kids make on the document-based question. One is they just do a laundry list of document analysis and they don't actually answer the prompt. The key to this is to answer the prompt and use claim, evidence, reasoning as your process for answering the prompt. And the evidence you're going to pull from your outside historical knowledge as well as the documents. And that is why it is not an essay about documents. It's an essay about history, using the documents to support your claim. The other thing is that students often inaccurately reference documents. It's going to be really important that you practice in-text citations and parenthetical notation and accurately describe the content by referencing the documents by name and/or author. All right. You do have to use parenthetical notation. You'll see some examples of that soon. And you need to bring in outside historical evidence to support your claim. So it's not enough to just use the evidence in the documents. You have to bring in information from the time period that also supports your claim that isn't found in those documents. And the big thing, don't quote the documents. I've read them, so have all of the thousands of AP readers. You need to interpret them, paraphrase them, tell us what it means in the context of the time period and the prompt. Explain how it supports your claim. That's what you need to be doing, not quoting documents. All right, so we're going to look at some samples of good and bad writing. I'm going to ask you to stop the video and read for a little bit and then restart your video after you've read. So the first set of writing comes from this prompt. I'm going to show you some body paragraphs, some better than others. I want you to think about this prompt. And the first thing I want you to do is to pause the video and actually analyze this prompt. What are you being asked to do? That's the number one step in any DBQ. So this prompt is compare colonial viewpoints with regard to the power of the British Crown in the period 1764 to 1776. What reasoning lay behind the colonists' support of or rebellion against the Crown? I want you to pause and maybe do a little pre-write in your notebook. What are you being asked to do? Okay, welcome back. Hopefully you've analyzed this prompt and are now ready to look at some writing samples. The first writing sample, I'll give you a hint, is a thumbs up good writing sample. I want you to pause this video and I want you to read through it all. And I want you to think about what makes this a good sample. Is it answering the prompt? Does it use documents to support a claim? Can you kind of infer what the claim might be? And is there outside historical evidence being used to support that claim as well? So pause the video and read through this one. Okay, now that you've paused your video and are back, we're going to talk about some features of this one that make it a quality piece of writing. I've highlighted some key points here that you should take note of. First of all, this kid used in-text citations correctly, mentioning the type of document it is and or the author or the name of the document is really important. Then at the end of that sentence where that in-text citation is, this person uses parenthetical notation. For this parenthetical notation, all you have to do is cite the document number, just like this, document 1, document 2. Okay, so that's how you do your in-text and parenthetical citations. The next one is the specific outside historical evidence. This is the person talking about the Declaration of Rights and Grievances, which was sent to Parliament. This is not coming from the documents, but this is coming from the person's brain because they remember reading and writing about this time period. So this is very specific. It has a date, it has the names, and what it actually did, and it explains how it supports their claim. And again, you also have to incorporate CAP analysis. So you're seeing this with document 7. And sometimes it's overt, meaning they use the words, the context of this document, or the author's point of view in this document, or it can be more subtle. This person chose a subtle route by saying this is indicative of his loyalty or loyalism to the crown when referencing document 7. So those are the 4 things that you really need to do well in your writing. Okay, I want you to pause and check out this not so great sample and see how it's different. All right, welcome back. Here's what this one did that was not awesome. First and foremost, it creates a laundry list of documents, in addition to the fact that none of these are cited correctly. You need to do in-text citations and then parenthetical notations. This person attempts to do CAP analysis. However, their CAP analysis becomes like that laundry list. And then it says this, and then they did that. You only have to choose one of those levels of analysis to talk about in your essay. You don't have to lay them all out for the writer or rather the reader. So this person is doing all of the levels of analysis, and where they think they're being detailed, they actually lack a lot of analysis. The context is the American Revolution. Well, there's a lot going on during the American Revolution. Tell me a little more about that. And then they don't really answer the prompt because all they're doing is analyzing the document. It's not addressing why someone might be loyal or might have rebelled against the crown. So make sure that you are using the evidence to support your claim and explaining how your evidence supports your claim. Claim, evidence, reasoning. All right. And then just know, don't quote the documents. Tell me how they support your claim, analyze them, explain what they mean, but don't quote them. Okay, so your essay should be 4 to 7 paragraphs. It should have an introductory thesis paragraph, 3 to 4 body paragraphs, and a conclusion. And then you'll have an awesome essay. You'll have 60 minutes to write these. In that 60 minutes, they're giving you about 15 minutes of reading time to read and analyze those documents. When you're writing your paragraphs, you want to have a paragraph structure that starts with a topic sentence that is likely related to one of the pieces of evidence that you listed in your thesis, especially if you're using a chicken foot thesis model. You want to have a document reference in there. How does this piece of evidence from the document support your claim? And a CAP statement. So using one of the levels of analysis from CAP, context, audience, purpose, or point of view, to analyze that document. And again, how that helps you understand and support your claim. You do not have to do all 4 levels of CAP on that analysis. Just pick the one that works best for that document. Then you need to bring in some outside information that is relevant historical evidence that is not in the documents. So every paragraph should at least have one concrete outside historical fact. When you're doing your docs and in-text citation, mention something from the source field. Who is the speaker? What kind of document is it? Explain how the document proves your thesis in your own words. Again, can't say this enough. Don't quote them ever. And then end with a parenthetical citation of the document you used. Did I mention you're not supposed to directly quote? Don't do it. Also, don't focus on the off-topic parts of the document. And don't be too vague. Be very specific. All right, so here's a way to do it when you're doing your in-text citation. Verb it. Say what the document is doing. It states, it explains, it demonstrates, it argues. In the excerpt from, the author explains. This political cartoon shows you how. Okay, so verb it. When you're doing your cap statements, make sure you're thoroughly explaining the context, audience, purpose, point of view, or the point of view of the document. Not and, or. Pick one. You only have to do one of the 4 categories for each document. Write cap for 5 of the 7 documents you reference. So there has to be, out of 5 of the 7 documents that you reference in your essay, there has to be some sort of cap statement with 5 of them. And again, it's an or, it's not an and. For 5 of them, you talk about context, audience, purpose, or point of view for 5 of them. Okay, so at the end of a sentence, you should cite it by putting the number in parentheses and explain it. Explain the document and how it supports your thesis. This is your reasoning. So if you want to pause again here for a second, just take a minute, go ahead and pause and read this passage. Okay, now that you've paused and looked at this, let's talk about it a little bit. This is using cap. This cartoon exemplifies the point of view. You can use the words point of view, purpose, audience, or context. Or if you are a more sophisticated writer, you can talk about those things using synonyms. But it's important that it's very clear to the reader that you're talking about one of those levels of analysis. All right, the other thing is make sure that if you are subtle, that it is still clear. So this is a more subtle example of point of view. So when you're thinking about how someone felt and how they express their gratitude, that's showing their point of view. Okay, when you bring in your outside historical evidence, your OHE, try to be as specific and detailed as possible. Name names, events, documents, historical movements, and describe them. If you know the dates, that's awesome. Although if you're not sure of the date, try and at least get it in the right decade. This is why you're reading all of that material, is so that you have all those historical factoids to back your claims up. And if anything, maybe you'll win Jeopardy someday and give me a shout out. All right, so the following passage actually lacks specifics. You don't have to rewrite this, but it says the poor conditions led to the creation of labor unions. Labor unions sought to organize workers and rebel against the industry for labor reforms. Like, what kind of conditions? What labor unions? What strikes? What workers? How did they rebel? If I'm asking any of those questions, then there's not enough detail. Your readers should not be asking questions. All right, so here's one example. So pause and take a look at this one. Here's another one. Both of these deal with the same image. One is far more clear than the other about how that image is showing us what is going on in history. You can see both are referencing the image parenthetically, but the second one actually shows you, and it's highlighted in blue, who the photographer was and what he was trying to do to make change during this time. So again, being very specific and very detailed in how we are talking about history. Okay, now it's your turn to go practice. There's some writing samples that you need to revise on this exercise, so go give it a shot.